Guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the Scout Tactical channel. So tonight we're going to do how to shoot a semi-automatic handgun. Kind of controversial because on YouTube everybody thinks they're an expert, and there are a lot of different ways that people show to do this. I'm going to show you the way I was taught and the way I have taught as an instructor, both in the civilian world for concealed handgun licenses and as a law enforcement firearms instructor. Now, please take this with a grain of salt. Realize that this technique is something you have to practice. Always be safe at all times with your handgun, what have you. Kind of develop variations of the technique if you need to work better for you. So don't just think because you've watched the video you know how to shoot a handgun. It takes, just like with most things, practice, practice, practice. So work on this. I'll show you some of the techniques that have always worked well for me, always worked well for other officers and other civilians that I've known that shoot a handgun. This is, again, semi-auto style because you do things a little bit differently on the revolvers. You guys know from watching the Scout Hunter channel, I love the revolvers. I have several revolvers, probably more than I have semi-auto pistols, but we're trying to do self-defense handguns from a semi-auto standpoint tonight. Okay, now this isn't going to be competition style shooting. This is not going to be, some type where you're laying down prone, something where you're shooting off a bench, something where you're shooting fast for score, nothing like that. This is a normal scenario, which would be self-defense, range time, normal handgun scenario. So probably the worst handgun scenario is when you're having to use it for real. Okay. First of all, part one, what we're going to start with is grip. Grip is most important because you have to have your grip before you can do most of the other things with a handgun. And remember me saying this, it's virtually impossible to reset your grip if you don't set it initially. You have to reshuffle and get everything going. You can't do it very seamlessly. So tonight we're using the super awesome Smith & Wesson M&P Pro 5-inch and 40. As you see, no mag in the gun, and as you see, no round in the chamber. I lock it back, fingers in, but you can see that too visually. So we have a clear weapon. All right. Here's what we will do. The first thing about your grip is you will seat your grip all the way up under the beaver tail, as you can see there. One of the common things you see for especially new shooters or guys going fast is they'll have their hand down. Have their hand down even more exaggerated. What does this do? Well, if you have your hand way down, then the firearm can flip up more and will flip up more. This is what's circulating, okay? So if this is moving back this way and there's no resistance here, it will flip up. So seat your hand well, okay, all the way up to the beaver tail. With this beaver tail on a semi-auto handgun, polymer or steel, 1911, whatever for platform, if it's all the way up and it has a decent beaver tail, it won't get you. You've seen slide bite. If you see on the top of my hand there's no way this slide is going to hit my hand. And I mean no way. If I'm all the way up, if it's biting into my hand, it's never going to get me. So you've seen some of the little pocket pistols, especially the old stuff, especially the least expensive stuff, the Lorsons and the Cobras and all that. They do slide bite people. They don't have a good beaver tail, things like that. And a lot of times your super compact concealed carry guns, hidden guns are going to have a real small beaver tail. So, but on a normal full-size gun or even compact gun, you'll grab it at the top. It won't get you. Okay. Now, do you hold the handgun like that, where it's just your hand straight up and down? See it past the crease of my hand right there? No, you don't. You actually cant the handgun, boom, to the palm or crease right there. Cant the handgun and it'll fit right in there. So if you look from the top, if you were like this, here's my hand. If you go out to that crease, my knuckles start slanting out to a 45. Of course, they won't be a 45, but they'll just cant out a little bit. So that's your normal grip. You'll grasp the gun, and your hand is naturally already where it's right in that palm or crease. That's two things. Number one, it's repeatable. You can feel that every time. So for consistency, which is the only way to really get to accuracy, you're now allowing yourself to do the same thing every time. If you guys are archers or bow hunters like I am, think of your anchor point. If you don't repeat the same anchor point every time, you don't have good accuracy. So you grasp the gun, your hand automatically lets it fall into that palm or crease right there, and you're good to go. It's all the way up, no problems. Now, of course, you grasp the gun with your finger not on the trigger. Law enforcement, civilian, self-defense, emergency, whatever. You do not grab the gun with your finger on the trigger. because motor skills are the first to go. So if you're in a real stressful situation or just a casual situation at the range, you never start by getting in the habit of grabbing that trigger. That is not how you shoot a handgun. Always remember that. Please practice good safety. Again, we've seen that this gun is clear. We'll show it again. There is no mag in the firearm, but your grip is slanted hand all the way up, and there you go. Now, what about this part? What do you do with your other hand? A lot of people ask that question. The second hand seems to be the most baffling part of shooting a handgun. Most people can get a fairly good grip on the thing, and you don't have to death grip it, by the way. So your other hand, your support hand is what that's called, no matter if you're right or left-handed, fills the gap. So there's surface area left right here. Okay, that's where your other hand goes. It just goes right up to it. Now, you should be able to hold the gun with that support hand on it. You should be able to hold the gun with the firing hand on it. This one just fills the gap. Both of your thumbs on a semi-auto normally pointed forward. Some guys like to go straight up. Most guys like to go forward. My hand is underneath. I put my hand there and wrap it. My hand is underneath the trigger guard. It's not out front with your finger. A lot of people like that. If that's for you, go for it. But remember that I don't do that because every gun is a little bit different. You shoot maybe the XDs from Springfield, they're real squared off. The Glock's super squared off with striations. The M&P rounded. I have a lot of different guns. So if I'm here and I'm expecting to be able to hold on to that, may not be there on every gun. So because I want to be repeatable and use the same technique, I grasp my gun the same way every time. So my finger's underneath the trigger guard. My hand fills that gap, and my thumbs are forward. Also, if your thumbs are up, then it kind of unlocks your wrists. If your thumbs are down and forward, it's pointing at the target in your mind, mentally, of course, they're not really pointing at the target, and it locks your wrists. Okay, if you're using a 1911 with certain controls on the side, any gun with different controls on the side, and you do this, you have to make sure that this isn't interfering with the gun controls. So if you shoot a particular style of gun and the thumbs aren't working for you right there, you may have to drop a little bit, may raise a little bit. But remember that the slide will be reciprocating as you're shooting, so you don't want to be in the way of any control that's mounted on the slide that's going to be going back and forth, because it will chew your hand up, obviously. All right. Why do we cant our hand a little bit, and why do we feel the other side? Well, we feel the other side of the handgun because in recoil, the gun is going to go to the path of least resistance, right? Basic physics. So if there's no hand here, this is least resistance because there's nothing pushing this way. So if you fire the handgun, pow, it'll come this way. Pow, it'll come that way. If you fill that gap with this, now you're both pushing and pushing with these, so it's kind of equal forces, and it's a lot less apt to go to the left in my case, since I'm right-handed. So you feel the grip to really keep the gun from recoiling like this. The gun should slide coming back. The gun should just slightly buck a little bit or straight in like this, depending on the grip angle of the gun. Okay, why do we cant this hand this way? Well, we cant this hand this way because of this. You want to be able to repeat, number one, your trigger pull, and you don't want your trigger pull to pull the gun off of your line of sight, off of your point of aim. So if you have your hand straight and you pull, see my finger? Does my finger go this way? No, it curves, right? When you pull the trigger, it would curve. So if you cant your hand, now your finger is more in an up and down motion. Is it pulling the gun off to the side one way or the other? No. Do I have too much finger in the trigger guard? No. For the third time, a cleared gun because I'm going to put my finger on the trigger. So if I cant my hand the correct way and I'm pulling the trigger, it's not moving the gun. Okay? I'll try to stand straight where you guys can see this. So it won't move the gun. Okay? If you have your hand straight or your finger way into the trigger, what are you doing? You're pulling the gun a little bit. And of course, I'm exaggerating that for the film, but that's how it is. So you cant the hand a little bit, number one, for repeatability. Number two, because it gives you a good, somewhat up and down trigger stroke, which is very repeatable. And it's using the bottom of the trigger area, which is an easier pivot than trying to go way up at the top. You're using your pivot by using the bottom to the middle to the bottom of the trigger. Farther down you go, the easier it is to pull normally, though the longer the travel in most triggers. Just some tips to try to get you shooting a handgun a little better. We're going to go through stance, we're going to go through arms, a sight picture, all of those things in different parts. This is part one. So the grip is you grasp the gun from the holster or from, you're at the range just as you grasp it initially, and your grip is set. You fill in the other side with your support hand by wrapping around, and then that gets your trigger finger ready to be in the right position, and that fills the grip over here to equal out the resistance so it's not going side to side on you. Pretty simple stuff, but it baffles a lot of people, I'm going to tell you right now. Think about what you're doing. Practice step by step with an unloaded gun. Make sure you get the stuff down in your head. You can only resort to your lowest level of training, they say, in a stress situation, but you have to practice this, so give it a whirl. You try it at home, unloaded, safe gun in a safe direction, or at the range, unloaded, safe gun, safe direction, no one else around, and then work up to it. Go to the range, try getting that grip initially, and it'll just come second nature. By the time you're done, you won't think about it. The really good shooters, anyone who's proficient, and I don't care if it's basket weaving, archery, car mechanic, handgun shooter, hunter, whatever it is, you've practiced enough to where it's second nature. Your body just knows what to do. So you'll grab that gun the same way every time. Your grip just naturally falls into place no matter what you're doing, and everything works. Guys, I hope this helps. Hope you like the video. Ask you to subscribe. Remember, Scout Tactical is part of a 3-channel network. Scout Tactical on the guns and gear, Scout Prepper on the emergency preparedness stuff, and Scout Hunter on the hunting gear and hunting adventures. Check them all out and subscribe. We're on the web at scouttactical.com. We're on Facebook, Instagram, of course, YouTube. And as always, thanks for watching.